Good afternoon and welcome to Border Report Live. My name is Rudy Mireles and I am your host here in Harlingen, Texas in the Rio Grande Valley. And joining me for today's program are El Paso correspondent Julian Rezendes and San Diego correspondent Salvador Rivera to talk about what they've been seeing along the border recently. But first, let's get to some headlines, starting with boxer Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. He's reportedly missed 2 court hearings this week. And according to some news reports, his attorneys do not know where he is currently being detained. Now, he was arrested last week on charges of overstaying his visa and lying on a green card application. And Border Report has learned he's supposed to be back in court tomorrow. That's Friday. USA Today reported that Chavez was being detained right here in the Rio Grande Valley of South Texas. Our local station here, KVEO, we made some phone calls and we reached out to people in regards to these reports. And a source told us that he's not here, but that he's being held somewhere in Texas. They didn't say exactly where. Now, in Texas's Hill Country, officials say 161 people are still considered missing after the catastrophic flooding that swept through Kerr County and surrounding communities. At least 120 people are confirmed to have died in that Independence Day flooding. Rescue crews from all over the country are in the region helping with that recovery process, including U.S. Border Patrol. And these are some images that we got courtesy of Border Patrol. They dispatched a number of agents to assist with search and rescue and recovery efforts. U.S. Customs and Border Protection says helicopters from air and marine operations are also helping out with that situation. Personnel from BORSTAR, which is the Border Patrol search, trauma, and rescue teams, are also in the Hill Country. And I'm going to go ahead and bring in our El Paso correspondent now, Julian. Julian, there's some flooding going on your side of the border as well. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, Rudy. We have some breaking news out here as well regarding the floods. A few days ago, we started getting some torrential rains, not in El Paso, which is a desert, but in a community in the mountains about 2.5 hours north of El Paso. It's called Ruidoso. And it's a place where people from El Paso go to escape for a weekend, get a different type of weather, different type of climate. And what happened is that the flooding, the rain was so intense that it caused some spectacular flooding that you're looking at on your screen right now. There's a river that runs from the Sacramento Mountains of New Mexico through Ruidoso. It's called the Rio Ruidoso, or the Noisy River. And it usually runs with 2 feet of water. And this time, it crested upwards of 20 feet of waters in some places. And you can see the effect. It just swept through roads, through homes, through entire neighborhoods, and caused a lot of damage. I can tell you that the latest news is that 3 people have lost their lives out there in New Mexico because of these floods. 2 of them were children, ages 9 and 4, and another one was a middle-aged person, age about 40, which has still not been identified. Now, I want to draw your attention to an image that should be coming up soon, and that involves an entire house, a house on stilts that was swept away by the current. There you see the current. This was really catastrophic, and the governor of New Mexico was in Ruidoso this morning. Several other officials from U.S. senators there's the image.
That's just incredible. I mean, the power and destruction that those floods can have. It's what are you hearing from folks out there, Julian?
Well, obviously, the community is completely devastated. Not too long ago, a few months ago, they went through some flooding, and now they were not expecting this, which topped whatever happened a few weeks back. Some people are totally lost their homes. Others are not sure how to rebuild. Many are grateful that they escaped tragedy, unlike this family, which was a visiting family from Fort Bliss, Texas, just spending some time out there, and they lost 2 of their members. Like I said, there's a 3rd fatality, but we haven't identified it. So the community is very concerned, very shocked, and they're hoping the recovery effort will be swift. And of course, that it stops raining.
Now, we know Border Patrol that, we're going to talk more about some of the skills that they use, but have they been dispatched out your way as well?
I'm not aware of that. I know that, like you said, that they were dispatched to Central Texas to help with not just with the flooding, which really you can't do anything about the flooding after the fact, except clean it up, but with the rescues. And over here in New Mexico, thankfully, we don't have reports of numerous people missing. So their presence and their specialty is to rescue people, to look for people. So they have not been needed out there in Ruidoso so far.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Julian, for that report. And we're going to come back to you in just a minute to talk about some of the training that Border Patrol agents are getting to do those search and rescues. Stay with us. Border Report will be back in just a minute. Welcome back to Border Report Live. My name is Rudy Mireles, your host for the program, and joining me now is our El Paso correspondent, Julian Resendez. Julian, a little bit before the break, we were talking about the flooding that's happening in New Mexico. You said not as many missing individuals there, thankfully, like we're having with the flooding situation in Central Texas. But one of the things that we talked about was Border Patrol agents, some of their search and rescue units coming. You've actually gotten to, ride along with these folks, witness the training. Why don't you tell us a little bit about those Border Patrol units, the rescue units that are deployed to Central Texas right now?
Here's some background of how this came to be, and it has to do with my colleague Sandra Sanchez's presentation yesterday. She spoke about migrant deaths along the border, and that's the reason why this unit came to be. Back in 1998. There were reports of record numbers of migrants who were dying while attempting to cross from Mexico into the United States. So there came to be something known as the Border Safety Initiative during the Clinton era. And this is what created a special operations unit within the Border Patrol. Its purpose initially was obviously to monitor for anybody who's injured out there. But their concern back then, a couple of decades ago, when they were formed, was actually rescuing agents, because it was the agents who routinely patrol areas which had different geographical features. We're talking about culverts, dry arroyo beds, the river itself. So that's why the unit initially was created to locate and assist and respond to calls for help from Border Patrol agents themselves. Now, obviously, with time, immigration since 1998 has increased tremendously. Illegal immigration has increased tremendously. So the focus has shifted from rescuing agents to rescuing more migrants. And last year alone, the Border Patrol rescued 5,400 people from dangerous situations, including, like you're seeing on your screen, rivers and canals, from people who fell from the border wall, from mountaintops, or who got exhausted while crossing the desert in heat, or they were about to freeze to death crossing the desert in winter. And now the unit was formed called BORSTAR, Border Patrol, which consists of Border Patrol agents who meet very stringent physical demands as well as teamwork demands. You cannot get into this unit if you can't 100% work together with other members, because you're not only the lives of the people that you rescue depend on cooperation and coordination, but also your own life when a rescue might go awry. Now, El Paso, the El Paso area was chosen as a place for this unit to be headquartered and to train. Why? Because we have a lot of the elements that are prevalent throughout the border. We have a desert to the west in New Mexico. We have mountains to the east, which are very, very steep. And often lead either to falls or people getting lost. We also have obviously a big mountain to the west in New Mexico, Cristo Rey. And while the Rio Grande here in El Paso is not as wide as it is in places like Eagle Pass, where it's like 60, 70 yards wide, and doesn't carry as much water, we have a network of canals that you're seeing there on your screen that run parallel to the border wall. And these canals, especially 2-3 years ago, when the border was still kind of more open than it is now, and people were crossing, people were falling into the canals and dying. We had a spate of a couple of dozen people who died in those canals, and that's where the Border Patrol BORSTAR, it's called the BORSTAR Rescue Unit, comes into effect. Agents are trained; they train in those canals So they're familiar whenever a migrant falls and loses his strength and starts going down, or when he gets caught up in the debris. And those canals sometimes carry debris. So that's the reason why the VorStar agents come in, throw what's called a lifeline, which is basically a rope with a disc attached for the migrant to grab it and be pulled up. So we have all the geographical elements here in El Paso for these agents to come, train, and then be deployed to places. You mentioned about the VorStar unit that was deployed to Central Texas from El Paso. Well, other units as well are very likely assisting from other places, including the Rio Grande Valley, where I know river rescues are a big thing.
Yeah, Julian, I wanted to ask you more about the training. I know pararescue in the United States Air Force, for example, they always like to joke, those guys, about how when things go bad for Marines, Navy SEALs, soldiers, they're the ones that get sent in to rescue them. The training, if anybody's ever seen, any of the training on Discovery Channel for Coast Guard swimmers, divers, these pararescue across the different branches, it's just so physically demanding. You've seen some of this training. Tell us a little bit about what it looks like.
Yeah, just a couple of weeks ago, I had the privilege of going out to the desert in New Mexico, to Otero County, New Mexico, and I was able to watch some of this training. What you're seeing there are some simulation. These are agents that are on the last leg of their training. They've already passed the most difficult part, and as you can imagine, the most difficult part is the physical requirements. I am told that 7 out of 10 agents, and you have to be a Border Patrol agent to apply to be in this rescue unit, 7 out of 10 agents who apply end up not being picked, either dropping out at some point of the course or just being told, sorry, you can close, keep working on it, come back next year. Because of the physical requirement, you have to be able to carry a lot of equipment, wear your uniform, including tactical vests, because they were so close to the Mexican border that they don't know whenever something bad's going to happen, such as someone throwing a rock at you or worse, a bullet. Like in this particular scenario, which is simulating the rescue of an agent who was shot by a smuggler. So the training is very demanding physically. It rivals probably anything that you see in some of the service agencies that you mentioned.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not just the physical portion of the test. It must be just absolutely mentally exhausting to prepare and then go into this training. When you talk to these agents, did they ever give you kind of, what it's like for them psychologically to go through these things?
Yeah, first of all, what they told me is that they really wanted to be in this because they wanted to save lives. And like I mentioned at the top of the show, last year, this unit and other Border Patrol agents were able to rescue 5,400 people, mostly migrants, who were in distress. So it's the satisfaction of basically saving a life that drives them. Now, they also told me that it's very impactful when you're in the field and you conduct, especially your first few rescues. People in trouble are screaming. People in trouble are letting you know that they feel that they're about to die. So you got to be psychologically prepared to deal with these scenarios in real life because you can't let them get to you. You got to go ahead and do it. Like in this case, after some person gets shot, you're supposed to make the bleeding stop, make sure it's not going to lead to an infection, and then transport the victim to an area where other agents are going to help you with this emergency. And let me mention that in addition to the physical training, to the psychological training, there's also medical training.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. I see them putting IVs in there. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, all these agents, as part of their training, they're also supposed to get certified as emergency medical technicians and pretty much first responders, medical first responders. So that's part of the training. They're giving time off from the training to go back to their bases and complete this training because you can't do it overnight. I mean, it takes weeks to get certified. So they go back, they come back, and then they go into the last portion of the training, which is the actual mock rescue and the psychological and team evaluations. I don't want to compare it to Survivor, but like I said, in order to get into this unit, you must be able to be in total sync with the rest of your peers. So peer evaluation is part of the criteria to make it into the BORSTAR rescue unit.
That's something that many people probably don't know. You know, how often do you get judged by your peers, the people that you're going to be working with before you get a job or get a new role at work? That's very interesting, but kind of goes to show just how elite these folks are.
Yes, because you're not talking about getting a job in an office. You're talking about a job in which people's lives are at stake. So there's going to be a total synchrony with your peers. There's going to be communication back with headquarters. Communication even with medical professionals when you really have to save somebody's life on the field and you're not a surgeon. So communication is very important part of this training.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your reporting on all that training and everything that those BORSTAR folks over at Border Patrol are doing. Appreciate it, Julian. All righty, well, stay with us because when we come back, Border Report San Diego correspondent Salvador Rivera joins us to talk about his trip with Border Patrol agents in the waters off the California coast to see how migrants are making their dangerous journey to the U.S. Border Report Live's back in about a minute. And welcome back to Border Report Live. My name is Rudy Mireles, and I am your host for today's program. And joining me now is our San Diego correspondent, Salvador Rivera. Hey, thanks for being here, Sal.
Of course, Rudy. Now, we have been seeing historic lows when it comes to land or illegal land border crossings. You can't say the same about what's going on the water, where the illegal maritime smuggling events have remained steady so far this year. Since October 1st, when the fiscal year began, we've seen just under 400 of the smuggling attempts on the water. Now, these are events that they know of, so there's a lot more happening that we simply don't know. Agents aren't able to interdict the boats, the migrants, as they come across the border. Yesterday, Customs and Border Protection extended an invitation for us to ride along, come on a boat, and go out on the water to see how they are doing on a daily basis, night and day, 24/7. They're out on the water trying to interdict, trying to stop this smuggling event. So we accepted that invitation gladly, and we set off from San Diego Harbor bright and early in the morning, just as the sun was coming out.
By the time the sun rises over San Diego, these air and marine agents with U.S. Customs and Border Protection have already been on the water for hours, looking for unlawful migrants trying to enter the U.S. along the Pacific Ocean.
That encompasses pongas, wrecked vessels, jet skis, swimmers, all those are considered maritime events.
Eric Laverne is with the U.S. Border Patrol, which arranged for members of the media to get on the water to experience what it's like to chase down a boat carrying unlawful migrants. Many times, agents encounter panga boats like this one.
You're looking at a vessel that anywhere else would not be considered seaworthy, but for this purpose, they're using it for a smuggling event. So when you're putting 20 to 25 people aboard that vessel, and there's no one to call out there, so if that vessel breaks down, you're on your own, right? Unless you're rescued by Coast Guard, the Navy, or someone else.
Laverne says smugglers don't think twice about endangering the lives of the migrants or the people near the coastline.
Smugglers have become more brazen in their activity. We've seen individuals landing boats in the middle of the day, nearly hitting surfers and swimmers who are in the waves as they're beaching their vessel.
There are times when smugglers don't make it to the beach as their boats capsize in the surf with deadly consequences. So far this year, 7 migrants have been killed in the waters of San Diego.
It's extremely dangerous.
These landings are happening not just in San Diego, but Los Angeles, Santa Barbara, and as far north as Central California.
The only way for us to handle this maritime smuggling problem is by working a whole of government approach. So that's between air and marine operations, the United States Coast Guard, United States Border Patrol. They're out here 24/7. But obviously, when you think about it overall, you have a 20-foot vessel in the Pacific Ocean. That is a large area.
And when they do spot a smuggling event in progress, it's hard to put an end to it.
Smugglers, they don't want to give up. They have no intention of giving up. They will run. They will beach the vessel. They will do anything they can to try to escape prosecution.
That is some incredible stuff out there, Salvador. I know we on this side of the border, we call them lanchas. They're typically reserved for illegal fishermen. You know, in my about 8 years of reporting here in the Rio Grande Valley, I think maybe twice we've seen them trying to smuggle people. That's a big difference. Tell us a little bit about just what your experience was out there.
Well, it was, first of all, it's exhilarating. Being out on the water on a fast boat, it's a lot of fun. But then you think about what the men and women with Customs and Border Protection's Air and Marine Unit are doing on a daily basis. And they're out there in the water. Yesterday, we were lucky that the Pacific Ocean cooperated and it was somewhat calm. But think about what it's like when there's a storm approaching and the waves are big, the currents are against you. You're going to be bobbing and weaving out there, as we call it, deadliest catch experience out there. And but that's something that not only are the agents going through, but think about the migrants who load on this panga, this lancha that's got enough room for maybe a dozen people, but they fit about 25 folks on there, and they set off on their journey from well south of the border. Perhaps there's a little fishing village somewhere in Baja, northern Baja, and they set off in the middle of the night and they head north. And think about what it might be like if you've never been on the water. You're going to get seasick. You're going to get cold, especially during the winter when there are storms. You're going to be bobbing and weaving, and you're going to be feeling sick. You might get wet and drenched, and that could lead to hypothermia because the Pacific Ocean is very cold, especially in the wintertime. A lot of people come to San Diego saying, oh, I can't wait to get in the ocean. And I always tell them, well, make sure you do it in the middle of the summer. You might get a 6 to 8 week period where you actually can go in the water and enjoy. Otherwise, it's extremely cold and people get sick all the time and hurt on these lanchas, on these panga boats. But this is something that people are willing to do, and they're willing to pay anywhere from $10,000 to $15,000 a piece for the opportunity to get onto one of these lanchas and then head north on their journey into the U.S., a journey that can take hours. Sometimes it takes days. And sometimes, as Agent Laverne was saying, the pangas, the motors break down, and now you're adrift out on the water, and it might be days before anybody finds you. And if you're lucky, if they do, if not, you're going to go through some horrible, horrible consequences. Now, another component of this, Rudy, is prosecution. The U.S. attorney was telling us that it's not just arresting, interdicting the smugglers, but now there has to be penalties. There has to be consequences. So not only are they prosecuting them, but now, Rudy, some of the sentences could be 30 years in prison, if not longer. So they're saying, yes, we catch them, we arrest them, but now there has to be penalties, consequences, and that's what they're trying to do more of, to sort of send a message and make sure that this is a deterrent to the illegal crossings, these maritime events that happen out on the water, out in the Pacific Ocean.
We just have about 2 minutes left. I hate to rush you, but I do have a question. You were mentioning, these folks paying tens of thousands of dollars to do this, to make this journey. Do you know about how long they're on these boats for? I mean, they're not just, just on the other side of the border and trying to go around the border wall that, goes out into the ocean. How long are these journeys for these folks?
This could be 4 hours if you're lucky. But again, if the currents are against you, it's going to take you days. And sometimes they don't just go along the coast and head north and beach. A lot of times they head to the west for as much as 100 miles before they make a right, and then they hit land up in Los Angeles, as far north as Santa Barbara County, way up there in Central California. So this journeys can take days. And a lot of the times you don't have enough water, rations to keep you going. Certainly you're not prepared for the elements. So it's a tough go. It's a rough, rough trip that a lot of these migrants are willing to do simply for the hope, the prize of maybe getting to the U.S. and leading a better life for yourself and your families.
All right. Well, thank you so much for getting out on that boat for us, Salvador. I remember last time I was on a boat for a story, I was out on sick leave for about 2 days just with seasickness. So I could only imagine what it must be like out there for these folks and, you know, on a recurring basis. I appreciate it. And thank you so much to you, Julian Resendiz, our El Paso correspondent, for joining us to talk about the Borstar training today. We really appreciate you both being here. And before we go, I just wanted to remind you to go ahead and check your local Nexstar stations for their schedule, because you won't want to miss this week's Political Power Ranker show. This week, host Chris Berg and Emerson College's polling director are going to examine who's up, who's down in the world of politics based on data, so make sure to check that out. And also make sure to check out borderreport.com. You're going to find all the stories that Julian, Salvador, Sandra Sanchez, our South Texas correspondent, and our incredibly talented team of award-winning border journalists are working on every single day. My name's Rudy Mireles. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you all tomorrow.